We are now back to open session, and I would like to note for the record that no votes were taken. During our executive session, we discussed the ongoing litigation with reference to Atlantic Yards. We took no votes. Again, I want to apologize for the length of that session to our visitors and guests, but it was very, very important that our board clearly understand this very important situation. As we continue with our meeting, I'm now going to ask Robin to present to the board the Atlantic Yards Land Use Improvement Project. Robin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, this involves the Brooklyn project at the corner of Flatbush and Atlantic, the first building of which is going up the arena, which is expected to be the home of the NBA's Nets, starting in the fall of 2012. The director should know that most of the excavation for the arena has taken place. The foundations are being laid, and steel for the arena is actually being erected and coming up out of the ground. In terms of the relevant litigation background, I start back when this project was approved in 2006. At that time, ESDC had a project plan and did an environmental analysis of that project plan, which resulted in a 2006 final environmental impact statement. In 2009, the project was modified and reviewed again. At that time, the principal relevant change was that instead of requiring the developer to pay for the entire 22-acre parcel up front, ESDC and the MTA permitted property acquisitions in phases. All of the 2009 modifications were analyzed in an environmental technical memorandum under SECRA, which continued to assume a 10-year construction schedule out to 2009 based on the assumptions at that time, and also further analyzed the delay of approximately 5 years out to 2024 based on economic conditions. That technical memo from 2009 concluded, under both the 10-year schedule and the further delay schedule, that there would be no new significant adverse impacts that had not already been analyzed in the 2006 FEIS, and that therefore no supplemental environmental impact statement was required. Based on that review, the directors adopted the 2009 Modified General Project Plan. Based on that approval, transaction documents were negotiated and signed, including a development agreement, which, as consistent with the general project plan, indicated that the developer needed to use commercially reasonable efforts to complete the entire project by 2019, but also permitted an outside completion date of 2035. Related MTA agreements, also executed at about the same time, permit property acquisitions also beyond the 10-year schedule. A recent court decision directed ESDC to determine, in light of the provisions of those transaction documents, whether it continued to be reasonable that the 2009 tech memo analyzed a construction schedule of 10 years. Essentially, the petitioners in that court case claimed that ESDC violated SECRA by approving the 2009 Modified General Project Plan without a supplemental environmental impact statement, given the outside dates in the transaction documents. Petitioners also accused ESDC of misleading the court regarding that 25-year outside date. To the contrary, staff believes that the 2009 tech memo assumptions were reasonable. The 10-year schedule was evaluated by ESDC in light of the market demand for the project's residential units, which at that time ESDC determined to be robust over a 10-year time horizon based on expected population growth, Brooklyn's tight housing market, the project's affordable housing component, and the transit accessible site. ESDC also considered the developer's contractual commitment and financial incentives to bring the project to completion on an expeditious schedule. And as I said, in addition, that 2009 technical memorandum analyzed impacts of a further delay based on economic conditions out to 2024. Because we believe that the 2009 analysis was reasonable, and because there was no misleading of the petitioners and the court, ESDC has sought leave to appeal the court decision. At the same time, ESDC is complying with the court order. Staff has worked with counsel and consultants to analyze the relevant transaction agreements for the project, and the conclusion is that those agreements are not inconsistent with the 2009 technical memorandum assumptions. The agreements require the developer, as I said, to use commercially reasonable efforts to achieve a completion date of 2019. But perhaps more importantly, the agreements set a framework where the market demand for the project's buildings can be expected to bring the project to completion as soon as it is commercially reasonable to do so. The documents separately set forth the outside completion date of 2035. So after a thorough review of the court's decision, the project agreements, and the prior analyses, the ESDC staff concluded that the best approach to take in complying with the court order is to focus on the technical portion of the further analysis, the technical portion of a further analysis on a 25-year outside date set forth in the development agreement. ESDC staff and consultants have analyzed an additional delay scenario extending through and including an explicitly assumed outside completion date of 2035. That's the analysis that's set forth as Exhibit B to your materials. Just to be clear, this analysis of a hypothetical and unanticipated 25-year build-out to 2035 allows the ESDC to determine whether the two build-year assumptions in the 2009 tech memo, the 10-year assumption to 2019, and the further delay assumption to 2024, whether or not those were critical to that document's conclusion. In undertaking this analysis, ESDC staff does not intend to suggest that the construction schedule assumptions in the 2009 technical memorandum were unreasonable. As is set forth in the materials before you, similar to the conclusion of the 2009 tech memo, the further technical analysis concludes that further modification of the project's construction schedule to an outside completion date of 2035 would not result in any new or substantially different significant adverse impacts than those addressed in the FEIS, and that therefore there is no need for a supplemental environmental impact statement for the project. Based on this analysis and in response to the court's decision, ESDC directors are being asked to make three findings, which are set forth in your materials, summarized as follows. Number one, the negotiated project transaction documents do not materially affect the reasonableness of the schedule assumptions used in the tech memo. Number two, at this point, it appears unlikely that the project will be constructed on a 10-year schedule because the actual construction schedule has lagged behind the projected schedule provided in 2009, and because of continuing weak general economic and financial conditions. And third and last, a delay in the 10-year construction schedule through and including a 25-year outside date would not result in any new significant adverse environmental impacts not previously identified and considered in the FEIS and the 2009 technical memo, and that therefore an SEIS is not required or warranted. Thank you.
Okay. For the directors, are there any questions for Robin? No additional questions for Robin. Okay. We have several speakers. I would like the speakers to adhere to our previously announced opening remarks.